Good evening, and welcome back. It is good to have you here again, in the quiet. Wherever you are, however the day has treated you, you can set it all down now. The day is finished. There is nothing more it needs from you. So let it go. Take a slow, deep breath and release it gently. Settle into whatever comfortable place you have found. Let your body grow heavy. Let your shoulders drop. Let the tension of the day drain slowly away from your forehead, your jaw, your hands, until you are resting completely in the stillness. There is no need to stay awake for what follows. If sleep comes early, let it come. The story will carry on softly in the dark, and you may follow it as far as you wish before drifting away entirely. Tonight, imagine a fire, a small fire, burning low in the night, somewhere on the high plains of ancient Persia. The flames have settled now into a soft, steady glow. The embers pulse gently, orange and gold and deep red, and the warmth of them holds back the cold of the dark. For thousands of years, in this part of the world, people gathered around fires just like this one. And in the flickering light, the old ones would tell stories. Stories of how the world began, of the first man and the first kings, of light and of darkness, and of the long, slow struggle between them. These are some of the oldest stories ever told. They were sung and spoken and passed down through countless generations. And much later, more than 1,000 years ago, a great poet named Ferdowsi gathered them together into an enormous book of verse called the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. It took him more than 30 years to write, and within it, he preserved the ancient memory of a whole people, their myths, their heroes, their beginnings. Tonight, we will travel into that book, back to the very dawn of the world. We will watch the universe come into being. We will meet the first king of all, and we will follow the long line of rulers who came after, through a golden age and through a darkness, and back into the light again. So let the fire burn low, let your eyes grow heavy, and let us begin as all the oldest stories begin, at the very beginning. In the beginning, before the world, there were two. High above, in endless light, there was Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the source of all that is good. He dwelt in the heights, in a radiance without limit, in perfect wisdom and perfect goodness. From him came light and truth and order, and there was no shadow in him at all. And far below, in the deepest dark, there was another. His name was Ahura Mazda, though he is more often called Ahriman. He was the spirit of darkness, of chaos and destruction, and the lie. He dwelt in the lowest depths, in a blackness without light, knowing nothing of the world above him. And between these two, between the highest light and the lowest dark, there lay a great emptiness, a void. And for a long age, the two remained apart, each in his own realm, separated by that vast and silent space. Now, Ahura Mazda, in his wisdom, knew all things. He knew that Ahriman existed, far below in the darkness. He knew it, and he understood it. But Ahriman, in his ignorance, knew nothing. He did not even know that the light, or the wise Lord, existed at all. He simply dwelt in his darkness, alone, unaware. And then, one day, Ahriman rose up, and for the first time, he saw the light. He saw it shining, high above the void. And being what he was, being made of envy and malice and the will to destroy, he did not wonder at its beauty. He did not long to join it. Instead, the moment he saw the light, he hated it, and he resolved to destroy it. the light was far above him, beyond the void. And so, for now, Ahriman sank back down into his darkness, to gather his strength and to wait. And Ahura Mazda, knowing what was to come, began to create. He brought forth the world, not all at once, but in stages, like a craftsman building something with great care. First, he created the sky, vast and shining, like a great dome of polished stone. Then he created the waters, gathering below the sky. Then he set the earth upon the waters, broad and firm. Then he brought forth the first plant, a single plant growing alone. Then the first animal, and then the first man. And he placed the sun and the moon and the countless stars into the heavens, to turn slowly above the world, to mark the days and the seasons, and to fill the night with light. For a time, all was perfect. The world was new and clean and whole. There was no death in it, no sickness, no decay. The first plant grew green and tall. The first animal grazed in peace, and the great lights wheeled gently through the sky in a world that was exactly as it was meant to be. But Ahriman had not forgotten his hatred, and in time he gathered himself, and he rushed upward, out of the darkness, and he broke into the perfect world. He came like a great blight. Where he passed, he brought all the things that had not existed before. He brought death into the world. He brought sickness and pain and decay. He poisoned the waters, and he withered plants, and he brought suffering to the first animal and to the first man. He stained the perfect creation with all the darkness he could pour into it. And so began the long struggle, the struggle between light and darkness, between good and evil, that the people of ancient Persia believed lay at the very heart of the world. Ahura Mazda's creation, good and beautiful, and Ahriman's corruption, spreading through it like a shadow. But here is the thing the old stories always remembered. The darkness was not equal to the light. Ahriman could spoil the world and wound it and fill it with suffering, but he could not win. For the light was older and wiser and stronger than the dark. And it was believed that, in the end, at the very end of all things, the light would triumph, the darkness would be defeated, and the world would be made perfect once more. But that is the end of the story, and we are still at the beginning. For into this world, this beautiful, wounded, struggling world, caught between light and darkness, the first human beings would come, and kings would rise among them, and the long tale of their glory and their failures would begin. So let us turn now to the first of them all, the first man, the first king, the one who stood at the very dawn of the human world. His name was Kayumars, and he was the first man, the first king, the one from whom all others would descend. He came into the world at the very dawn of the human age, and he made his home not in a palace, not in a city, for there were none yet, but high up in the mountains. The old book tells us that Kayumars lived upon a mountain, and that he and his people clothed themselves in the skins of leopards. They were the first to learn how to live in the world. And in those early days, there was a kind of wonder about everything, for everything was new. The first taste of food, the first shelter from the cold, the first gathering of people around a leader they trusted. And Kayumars was a good king. Under him, the world knew a kind of peace. It is said that all the creatures of the world, the wild beasts of the mountains and the plains, came and bowed before him and lived gently in his presence. There was a harmony between the first man and the living world around him, The animals did not fear him. They gathered near, drawn to the light of his goodness. For Kayumars carried something within him. The Persians had a word for it, a beautiful and important word that runs through all these old stories. They called it the Far. The Far was a kind of divine glory, a radiance, a light that rested upon a rightful and righteous king, marking him as chosen, as blessed, as worthy to rule. You could not see it with ordinary eyes, exactly, but you could feel it. It was the sign of a king who ruled in harmony with the light, with Ahura Mazda, with goodness itself. And as long as a king kept the Far, he prospered, and his people prospered with him. Remember the Far, it will matter, again and again as our story goes on. But Ahriman, the spirit of darkness, was watching. He could not bear to see the peace and harmony of Kayumars and his people, and so he sent forth evil into the world to trouble them. There was sorrow in those early days. There was loss. The darkness pressed against the light, as it always did. But the line of Kayumars endured, and after him came others to carry the work of building the human world forward. After Kayumars came his grandson, Hushang, and it was in the time of Hushang that one of the greatest of all discoveries was made, the discovery of fire. The story is a lovely one. One day, Hushang was traveling through the mountains when he saw a great dark snake, a creature of menace, a thing of Ahriman's darkness. He took up a stone and he hurled it at the snake, but the snake slipped away, and the stone struck against another stone. And from that meeting of stone against stone came a spark, a bright spark leaping out into the dry brush and catching and growing into the first flame the world had ever seen kindled by human hands. The snake escaped, but something far greater had been found: light in the darkness, warmth against the cold, fire, the great gift, the great companion of humankind, born from a single spark struck against the stones. And Hushang understood at once what a gift this was. That night, he and his people lit a great fire, and they gathered around its warmth and its glow, and they gave thanks. For in the fire they saw a piece of the very light of Ahura Mazda himself, brought down into the world, to push back the darkness of the night. And the people of Persia remembered this. For thousands of years afterward, they kept a festival in honor of that first fire, a midwinter festival of flame, lit against the longest nights of the year. A celebration of the moment the darkness was first pushed back, and warmth and light came into the homes of humankind. So the world was being built, piece by piece, a king upon a mountain. A spark struck from a stone, fire in the night, the slow, patient work of bringing light and order into a world that had been wounded by the dark. And then there came a king greater than any before him, a king of such glory, such brilliance, such achievement, that his name would never be forgotten. His name was Jamshid. When Jamshid came to the throne, the Far shone upon him brighter than it had upon any king before. He was radiant, he was wise, he was gifted beyond measure. And under his rule, the world entered into a golden age, perhaps the greatest age the human world had ever known. For Jamshid was a maker, a builder, a bringer of gifts, and one by one, he gave to humankind the arts and crafts that would shape civilization itself. First, the old story tells us, he turned his mind to metal. He showed his people how to soften iron in the fire and how to shape it into helmets and armor and swords, and also into the tools of peace, into blades for working and points for plowing. the secrets of the forge, drawn out of the earth and the flame. Then he turned to clothing. He taught his people how to spin thread and how to weave it into cloth, into linen and silk and fine garments, how to dye them in bright colors, how to clothe themselves in beauty as well as in warmth. Then he ordered the building of houses and of baths and the working of bricks and stone, so that people might live in comfort and in dignity. He divided the people into groups according to their work, the priests, the warriors, the farmers, the craftsmen, so that each might do what they did best, and the whole might flourish together. He taught the gathering of perfumes and the use of medicines, so that sickness might be eased and the body cared for. He showed how to sail upon the water in boats, crossing from shore to shore. Under Jamshid, it is said, the world simply bloomed. There was no death in his golden age, no sickness that could not be healed, no bitter cold, no scorching heat, for the weather itself seemed to soften under his rule. The demons of Ahriman were bound to his service, made to labor for the good of humankind. The world was at peace and full and rich and beautiful. And to crown it all, Jamshid had a great throne made for himself, a throne of gleaming gems and gold. And he commanded the demons to lift it up high into the air, so that he might be carried aloft, shining above all the world. He rose into the sky upon his glittering throne, blazing like the sun itself, and all the peoples of the world gathered below to gaze up at him in wonder and to celebrate. And on that day, the story tells us, Jamshid declared a great festival. He called it the New Day, now Ruz, the first day of a new year, marked at the coming of spring, when the world wakes again from the cold of winter. And the people feasted and rejoiced, and the festival of Nowruz was kept from that day onward, and is still kept even now, thousands of years later, every spring, by millions of people, in honor of that shining day when Jamshid rose into the sky. It was the height of the Golden Age, the very summit of human glory. A king of light, ruling a world of peace and plenty, lifted up upon a throne of gold beneath the open sky. But this, you see, is the most dangerous moment of all. For when a person stands at the very summit, when everything has gone right, when all the world bows down before them, when they have risen higher than anyone has ever risen, it is then, exactly then, that the oldest of all dangers begins to whisper. The danger that the old stories return to again and again as the deepest flaw in the human heart, the danger of pride. For 300 years, Jamshid ruled in glory, and for 300 years, all was well. But slowly, so slowly that perhaps even he did not notice it at first, something began to change inside the great king. He looked upon all that he had done, the arts he had given, the cities he had raised, the demons bound to his will, the golden throne that lifted him into the sky. And a thought began to grow in him, a small thought at first, but it grew. Look at all I have made, he thought. Look at all I have given. Is there anyone in all the world like me? Is there any power I do not hold? And the thought grew and grew until at last it swallowed his wisdom entirely. And one day, Jamshid gathered the great ones of the world before him, and he spoke words that no king had ever dared to speak. I am the maker of the world, he said. All the good things you possess because of me. The crafts, the comforts, the very order of your lives, all of it flows from me. There is no one above me. There is no power greater than mine. And then he said the words that could not be unsaid. "Call me," he said, "not king. Call me God." A silence fell, for this was the one thing that could not be. To rule with the far, a king must rule in harmony with the light, must remember that his glory was a gift, lent to him by something greater than himself. But Jamshid had forgotten. In his pride, he had claimed the place of Ahura Mazda himself. He had taken the gift and called it his own. He had reached for the throne of heaven. And in that moment, the far departed from him. The old book describes it simply and terribly. The divine glory, the radiance that had marked Jamshid as the rightful king, simply left him. It rose away from him like a bird taking flight, and it was gone. And without it, Jamshid was only a man. A powerful man, a gifted man, but only a man stripped of the light that had made him great. And the world felt it at once. The harmony that had held everything together began to unravel. The peace of the golden age began to crack. The peoples who had bowed before Jamshid began to turn away from him, for the light that had drawn them was gone. Disorder crept back into the world, and in the shadows, the old darkness, Ahriman's darkness, which had only been bound, never destroyed, began to stir and to gather and to look for a way back in. And it found one. Far away in the lands of the south, there was a young prince, and it was through him that the darkness would return to the world. His name was Zahhak. For now, Jamshid still sat upon his throne, but his glory was hollow. His far was gone. And though he did not yet know it, the days of his golden age were ending, and a long darkness was about to fall across the world. So fades the light when pride takes hold. So falls the greatest of kings, when he forgets that his greatness was never truly his own. Let us turn now to the gathering shadow, to the young prince in the south, and to the terrible bargain that would bring 1,000 years of darkness into the world. In the lands of the desert, there lived a young prince named Zahhak. He was not, at first, an evil young man. The old story is careful about this. Zahhak was brave and bright and full of energy, but he was also restless and ambitious, and his heart was not well guarded. And that, as it turned out, was enough. For a heart that is not well guarded is a door that the darkness can open. His father was a good and gentle king who ruled justly and loved his son. But Ahriman, the spirit of darkness, ever watchful, saw in young Zahhak the opening he had been waiting for. And so Ahriman came to him, not as a monster, not as a thing of horror, but disguised as a clever, charming friend, a smooth and flattering voice, whispering in the young prince's ear. "Why should you wait?" the voice whispered. "Why should you sit in your father's shadow year after year, waiting for a throne that should already be yours? You are greater than he is. You deserve more. Take what is yours." And little by little, the whispering did its work. It is always so in these old stories. The darkness does not break down the door by force. It simply whispers patiently until the door is opened from within. And at last, Zahhak, his good sense drowned beneath the flattery, his ambition inflamed, allowed a terrible thing to happen. Through Ahriman's scheming, his gentle father was killed, and Zahhak took the throne for himself. And so the darkness had its foothold, a young king upon a throne, with blood on his conscience, and Ahriman whispering at his side. But Ahriman was not finished, for Zahhak was only the beginning of his plan. Ahriman came to Zahhak again, this time disguised as a wonderful cook. In those days, People ate simply, plainly, but this cook prepared dishes such as no one had ever tasted, rich and savory and delicious beyond imagining. And Zahhak was delighted. Day after day, the cook delighted him with new wonders until the king would deny him nothing. "Ask me for anything," said Zahhak at last. "Whatever you wish, it is yours." And the cook asked for one small, strange thing. "Only this," he said. "Grant me the honor of kissing your shoulders." It seemed a harmless request, and Zahhak granted it. The cook leaned in and pressed his lips to each of the king's shoulders, and then, in an instant, he vanished, as though he had never been there at all. And from the places where he had kissed, something began to grow. From each of Zahhak's shoulders there rose up a serpent, 2 black snakes growing out of the king's own body. Zahhak was horrified. He had them cut away, but the moment they were cut, they grew back, exactly as before. No blade could remove them. They were part of him now. And then Ahriman came one final time, disguised now as a wise physician, and he gave his terrible counsel. The serpents, he said, could not be removed, but they could be kept quiet. They could be soothed and prevented from doing worse harm if they were fed, and they would feed on only one thing: the brains of young men and women. And so began the long horror of Zahhak's reign. Each day, 2 young people were taken, so that the serpents upon the king's shoulders might be fed. It was Ahriman's plan all along, not merely to set a dark king upon the throne, but through him to devour the very future of humankind. 2 lives at a time, day after day, year after year. Zahhak overthrew the fading Jamshid and seized the throne of the world, and his reign stretched on, not for years, but for centuries. 1,000 years, the old story says. 1,000 years of darkness, of fear, of the daily toll taken to feed the serpents of the shoulders. The Golden Age was a distant memory now. The light had withdrawn, and the world lay beneath the shadow of the Serpent King. But the old stories never end in darkness, for even in the deepest night, the light is never wholly gone. It waits, it gathers, and somewhere in a humble place, far from the throne, it begins quietly to rise again. For 1,000 years, the Serpent King ruled, and the world grew weary beneath him. But Zahhak, for all his power, was not at peace. For deep in the night, he was troubled by a dream. He dreamed that 3 warriors came against him, and that the youngest of them struck him down and bound him and dragged him away in chains to a great mountain, while a cheering crowd followed behind. Zahhak woke in terror, and he summoned the wisest men of his kingdom and demanded that they tell him what the dream meant. They were afraid, for they could see the truth, and they knew he would not wish to hear it. But at last, one brave interpreter spoke. "Your days are numbered, O king," he said. "A child will be born, a boy named Feradun, and he will grow into the warrior of your dream, and he will bring your reign to its end." Zahhak was seized with fear, and from that day he set his soldiers searching everywhere for the threat to his throne. But fate is not so easily escaped. The child Feradun was born and hidden away and raised in secret, far from the king's reach, nourished, the old story says, by the milk of a wondrous cow in a green and hidden place. And he grew, year by year, into a strong and noble young man, while the Serpent King's fear gnawed at him from within. And meanwhile, the suffering of the people went on. 2 young lives taken every day to feed the serpents. And in time, this suffering reached a man named Kaveh. Kaveh was not a king. He was not a warrior. He was a blacksmith, an ordinary man who worked at his forge and asked only to live in peace with his family. But one by one, the king's men had come for his children to feed the serpents until he had lost almost all of them. And when they came at last for his final son, something in Kaveh broke, or rather, something in him rose. He went to the palace of Zahhak himself, and there, before the throne, before the Serpent King and all his court, this ordinary blacksmith did the thing that no one else had dared to do. He spoke. He cried out against the king's injustice. He demanded that his son be spared. And his voice, the voice of one ordinary man who had simply had enough, rang through the hall. And then Kaveh did something that would never be forgotten. He took the leather apron that he wore at his forge, the simple apron of a working man, and he raised it up high upon the point of a spear, like a banner, and he carried it out into the streets. And he called upon the people to follow him, to rise up at last against the Serpent King, who had devoured their children for 1,000 years. And the people came. That humble blacksmith's apron, lifted on a spear, became the banner of a rebellion. And the people gathered behind it, and they marched. And they sought out the young man who had been hidden all those years, Feradun, now grown, now ready. And they raised him up as their rightful king to lead them against the darkness. Feradun took up the fight. He was the warrior of Zahhak's dream, come at last. And with the people behind him, and the divine glory, shining upon him once more, for he was a rightful and righteous king, he marched against the Serpent King, and he overthrew him, and he cast him down. But here the old story does something curious and worth remembering. Feradun did not kill Zahhak. He raised his weapon to strike the final blow, but a voice stopped him. It was not yet time, the voice said, for Zahhak to die. And so instead, Feradun bound the Serpent King in chains, and he dragged him away, just as the dream had foretold, to a great mountain. To Mount Damavand, the highest peak in all the land, its summit wrapped in snow and cloud. And there, deep within the mountain, Feradun chained Zahhak in the darkness. And there, the old stories say, he remains, bound, imprisoned, not destroyed. For the darkness is never wholly destroyed, but contained. Held fast within the mountain, away from the world, while the light returns to the lands above. For with Zahhak chained, the long night ended at last. Feradun took the throne, and the far shone upon him, and the world breathed again. The daily horror was over. The children were safe. And after 1,000 years of shadow, the morning came back to the world. A blacksmith's apron raised on a spear, an ordinary man who simply had enough, and from that small act of courage, the dawn. And so our story comes to rest. A world made in light and wounded by darkness. A first king upon a mountain. A spark struck from a stone. A golden age and a proud king who reached too high and lost his glory. 1,000 years of shadow beneath the Serpent King. And at the last, an ordinary blacksmith and a hidden prince and the return of the morning. These stories are very old, older than the great poet who gathered them into his Book of Kings 1,000 years ago. They reach back and back into the deep memory of a people, into the time when they sat around their fires on the high plains and tried to understand the world they lived in. And what they saw when they looked at the world was this: a constant struggle between light and darkness, between the good and the true on one side, and chaos and the lie on the other. They saw it in the turning of the day, the sun rising, the sun setting, the long night, and the dawn that always, always came again. They saw it in the seasons, the death of winter and the return of spring, the festival of Nowruz, and they saw it, most of all, in the human heart, in the daily choice that every person faces between the path of light and the path of shadow. For that was the heart of what these old Persians believed, that the great struggle between Ahura Mazda and Ahriman was not only out there, in the heavens, among the gods. It was also in here, in each of us, in every choice, large and small, to be honest or to deceive, to build or to destroy, to lift others up or to pull them down. Every good thought, every good word, every good deed was a small victory for the light. And in the end, they believed the light would win. Always. The darkness might delay it, but it could never, finally, prevail. There is something comforting in that, I think, as the night grows deep around you. The knowledge that even after the longest darkness, even after 1,000 years of shadow, the morning still comes. That the light is patient and the light is strong, and the light always, always returns. And sleep, too, is a kind of trust in that returning. We lay down in the dark. We let the day end. We let ourselves descend into the night, unafraid, because we know, deep down, that the morning will come again. As it always has. As it always will. The Serpent King is bound in his mountain. The light has returned to the world, and the long line of kings and heroes carries on. But there is one more story for tonight. The night is still deep, and there is time, if you are still drifting here with me, for one last tale. And it is the gentlest of them all. A story not of kings and tyrants, but of an abandoned child and a great and kind bird high on a lonely mountain. So stay a little longer if you can, and let us follow this last soft story into sleep. Long after the days of Feridun, in the line of the heroes who served the kings of Persia, there was a great warrior named Sam. Sam was mighty and noble and respected throughout the land. He had everything a man could wish for, everything but a child. And so, for many years, he longed for a son. He prayed for one, and at last, his wish was granted. His wife bore him a baby boy. The child was healthy, strong, perfect in every way but one. For when he was born, his hair was not dark, as everyone expected. His hair was white, white as snow, white as the hair of a very old man, though he was only newly born. And when Sam saw this, his heart filled with a foolish fear. In those days, people did not understand such things, and they were quick to see omens and curses where there were none. Sam looked at his snow-haired son, and instead of love, he felt shame. He feared that the child was a mark of some demon, some curse, some punishment, and he made a terrible decision, the kind of decision that fear so often makes. He decided to be rid of the child. He gave the order, and the baby boy was carried far away, up into the Alborz Mountains, the great range that rises at the edge of the world, its highest peaks lost in cloud and snow. And there, on a lonely mountainside, beneath the wide and empty sky, the infant was left, abandoned, alone, with no one to care for him and no hope, it seemed, of surviving even a single night. The baby cried, there on the cold mountainside, a small, helpless sound lost in all that vastness. But the cry was heard. For high above, at the very summit of the mountain, there was a nest, and it was no ordinary nest. It belonged to the Simurgh. The Simurgh was a great bird, ancient and enormous and wondrous beyond description. Some said her feathers shone in every color like a rainbow. Some said she was part eagle, part peacock, part something older than either. She had lived since the dawn of the world, and she carried within her the wisdom of all the ages. And she was, above all things, kind. For the Simurgh was a creature of healing and of mercy, a guardian, a helper, a mother to those in need. That day, the Simurgh left her nest to find food for her own young, and as she soared over the mountainside, her keen eyes caught sight of something far below, a small shape crying in the sun, a human child, abandoned and alone. She swept down, and she gathered the tiny boy up gently in her great talons. And the old stories tell us that at first, perhaps, she meant to bring him back as food for her chicks. But when she landed in her nest, and her young ones looked upon the white-haired child, and when the Simurgh herself looked into his small face, something turned in her heart. Pity, tenderness, love. And the Simurgh chose to raise the child as her own. So it was that the abandoned boy, who would come to be called Zal, grew up not among people, but high on the mountain, in the nest of the great bird. She fed him and sheltered him, and kept him warm through the cold mountain nights beneath the shelter of her wings. And as he grew, she did more than keep him alive. She taught him. She shared with him her ancient wisdom, the knowledge of healing, the understanding of the world, the deep, patient wisdom of a creature who had lived since the beginning of time. And Zal grew strong. He grew wise. He grew into a remarkable young man, tall and capable, and full of a knowledge that no ordinary upbringing could ever have given him. The curse that his father had feared became, instead, a blessing. For where would any prince have learned what Zal learned in the nest of the Simurgh at the top of the world? The years passed, and travelers crossing through the mountains began to catch glimpses of a strange and striking figure. A white-haired young man moving with grace among the high crags in the company of a great and shining bird. And the rumors of him spread and traveled, and at last reached the ears of his father, Sam. And in those same days, Sam was troubled by a dream. In the dream, he saw his abandoned son, alive and noble and reproachful. And Sam woke with his heart full of grief and guilt for the terrible thing he had done so many years before. He understood at last what his fear had cost him, and he resolved to make it right. So Sam journeyed to the Alborz Mountains, to the foot of the great peak, and he looked up toward the distant nest, and he called out, begging the heavens for forgiveness, begging for his son to be returned to him. And the Simurgh, in her wisdom, knew that the time had come. She knew that Zal was a child of two worlds now, raised by her, but born of humankind, and destined to live among people, and to do great things in the world below. It was time for him to go home. But the parting was tender, for the Simurgh loved Zal as her own son, and Zal loved her as his mother, the only mother he had ever known. And before she sent him down the mountain, she gave him a gift. She plucked from herself 3 of her feathers, and she gave them to him. Keep these always, she told him. And if ever you are in true need, if ever you face a danger you cannot overcome alone, burn one of these feathers in a fire, and wherever I am, I will know, and I will come to you. And so, with the 3 feathers, and with all the wisdom she had given him, Zal came down from the mountain at last, and was reunited with his repentant father, who wept and embraced him and welcomed him home with joy. Zal grew into one of the greatest heroes of all Persia, and in time he came to the kingdom of Kabul, and there he met a princess named Rudabeh, beautiful and brave and kind. And the two of them fell deeply in love, and, against many obstacles, they were at last allowed to marry. But our story ends with one final gift from the great bird. For in time, Rudabeh was to have a child, and the birth was a hard one, so hard that it seemed both mother and baby might be lost. The child was simply too large, too strong. He could not be born in the ordinary way, and Rudabeh's life began to slip away. And Zal remembered the feathers. He took one of the Simurgh's 3 feathers, and he kindled a fire, and he laid the feather upon the flames. And as it burned, the sky darkened, and the great bird appeared before him, just as she had promised all those years ago. And the Simurgh, the ancient healer, told Zal exactly what to do. She gave him careful instructions, how to ease the birth, how to bring the child safely into the world, how to heal Rudabeh and save her life. And Zal did as she said. And the birth, which had seemed impossible, was made safe by the wisdom of the great bird. And so the child was born. A boy, enormous and strong and healthy, crying out lustily into the world. And his mother, overwhelmed with relief and joy at having survived, gave him a name that meant deliverance. She called him Rostam. And that child, born safely under the care of the Simurgh, would grow up to become the single greatest hero in all the long history of Persia, the mightiest warrior, the champion of champions. But his tale, the tale of Rostam, is a vast one, full of quests and battles and sorrows and wonders. And it is far, far too long for one night. That is a story for another time. Perhaps for another night, much like this one. For now, it is enough to know that the white-haired child, abandoned on a cold mountain and left to die, was saved by kindness, raised by wisdom, returned to the world in love, and that from him came a line of heroes that the people of Persia would honor for thousands of years. The thing that was feared became the thing that was treasured. The abandoned became the beloved, and mercy, high on a lonely mountain, changed the course of the whole world. And so, at last, our stories come to rest. We began at the very beginning, with light and darkness and the making of the world. We watched the first king upon his mountain, and the first fire struck from a stone. We saw a golden age rise, and a proud king fall. We endured the long shadow of the Serpent King, and we rejoiced when a humble blacksmith raised his apron like a banner, and the morning returned. And we ended gently with an abandoned child, and a kind and ancient bird, and the quiet triumph of mercy over fear. These are the old stories of Persia, told around fires on the high plains for thousands of years, written down, at last, by a great poet, so that they would never be lost, and carried all the way here, to you, tonight, in the dark. And through all of them runs that one deep thread, the turning of light and darkness, the fall and the rising again, the long night and the certain dawn. The Persians looked at their world, and they saw a great and patient truth at the heart of it, that the darkness, however long it lasts, is never the end of the story, that the light is always stronger, that the morning always comes. So let the darkness be gentle now. Let it be only rest, only the soft turning of the world between between one dawn and the next. There is nothing left to carry, nothing left to do. The fire has burned low, the stories are told. And you are exactly where you are meant to be. Let your breath grow slow and deep and easy. Let your body grow heavy and still. Let the long, patient light of the world watch over you, as it has watched over every sleeper, through every night since the very beginning. The Serpent King is bound in his mountain. The great bird keeps her watch upon the peak. And the morning, as it always does, as it always will, the morning will come again. But that is for later. For now, simply rest, sleep well, good night.